Welcome to the Voices That Propel Us, stories of justice, action, and community, a space where justice meets action and community voices rise. Each episode, we bring you stories from the front lines, changemakers, disruptors, and everyday heroes who are building a more just, equitable, and liberated world. This is more than a podcast. It's a call to listen, learn, and move together. You were just listening to music from the incredibly talented Stephen Kong. You can find him on Spotify and Bandcamp. Today we have with us Amani Roberts. Amani Roberts, award-winning music business professor, international keynote speaker, and global performer, is a renowned DJ, entrepreneur, and USA Today's best-selling author of The Quiet Storm and DJs Mean Business. With over 30 years in hospitality and 17 years in the music industry, he's worked with global brands like Marriott, 7-Eleven, Calendly, and Chartmetric, while generating millions of dollars in revenue. A sought-after speaker and co-host of the podcast Adventures in Business, Amani inspires professionals to unlock creativity, take risks, and remain resilient. His expertise has been featured in Forbes, People Magazine, NBC, and Yahoo Finance. Well, hello. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. I'm really excited about our conversation, and I'm really honored and grateful that you're taking the time to be here. But how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Denise. Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you.
Yeah, of course. No, I was reading your bio. I'm just really excited just to see where this conversation will go. To start off, I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. So, when you hear the phrase voices that propel us, what comes up for you, especially seeing you being someone who has spent decades amplifying voices through music, education, and storytelling? Yeah, I'd love to just hear what you think about this, the title of this podcast.
Yeah, so when I think about voices that propel us, I think about, specifically to the music industry, people who write lyrics, create music that uplift us, that challenge us, and that cause us to really ponder and think and be introspective for a good amount of time.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And before we get into the scholarship, I'd love to start off getting to know you better personally. So what was your first memory of an R&B group that made you feel seen, understood, or moved?
Ooh, I would say probably my first memory would be probably hearing the Isley Brothers and their old track called Fight the Power. And that was one where when I listened to it as a young person, I started to kind of understand what it meant, because then you have the parallel songs that were hip hop based. So that would be the first one that comes to mind.
No, thank you for sharing that. And, for myself too, I'm such a music lover. I feel like music has a way of really touching my soul or moving me in ways that I think other just avenues can't. But what do you think that music does in ways that other platforms or forms of expression aren't able to do?
I think music, particularly a little bit older music, allows people to say things through song that might not be understood if someone had said it straight up. Whether it be through lyrics, through alliteration, through different ways that people write and people sing. Yeah. They allow you to kind of deliver a message to more people, because it could be subtle underneath the music. It could be right in your face with the lyrics. It just allows, the message to be received by many people in different formats.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I'd love to further elaborate on that. So, as a DJ and music historian, you don't just play music, but you also preserve memory. So with that, when did you realize that R&B groups were more than just entertainment?
I think early on, because of when they were singing about love and heartbreak, and that's not things that people like to talk about, but they had no problem singing about it and talking about it. And I think that's when I realized that it was more than just entertainment. There was some meanings to the lyrics, to the words, to how they put the songs together.
No, thank you. I know you brought this up a little bit before, but were there any songs in particular, or any music that really resonated with you that helped to shape that perspective for you?
I always think back to Babyface, because he's one of the best songwriters in history. So he had a song on his Tender Lover album called Where Will You Go? It's a love song. That's one that comes to mind. For me personally, that was probably one of the first ones. I'm thinking. And then, you had Rick James he wasn't in a group, but still he had the song Mary Jane. He was talking about weed or whatever, but still, just the way he sang about it was very clever and creative, and it wasn't in your face. So if you were a kid, when I first heard, I had no clue. Only when I got older did I realize what it was about. That's when that comes to mind. So many songs. Like, I'm just trying to think, like, back in the 70s or 80s, Brick House by the Commodores, a classic song talking about a young lady who's very full-figured and has some great curves. But even there, like, people might not even realize what they're talking about nowadays. So it could be subtle, but in your face. Even you go to Keith Sweat, I'll give all my love to you. I mean, he's saying what he's talking about, but the way he put it in the song, I love. Oh, so many. SW. I mean, we could talk for days about different songs by different groups. I Get So Weak in the Knees, SWV. Amazing song. Great. So, I mean, we could go on for days if you want.
I love you sharing that. Thank you so much for sharing your passions. Like I said, too, I just love music. I feel like it just like, once a song like implants in my memory, it's like, oh, it's more than just that song or the music, but it can also like trigger like a specific memory. Like, oh, I remember when I heard the song for the first time, or just like, I think it's beautiful the way that you can connect through people and music. And, I think you've taken that just a step further in terms of like connecting music to like social justice and representation. So with that, your upcoming book, The Quiet Storm, reframes R&B groups as cultural institutions. So how did these groups function as pillars of Black identity during eras of profound social upheaval?
So, I think the two best groups, and I always have to refer to them probably because I have to look at my notes, but like you had the Impressions, and they had a song in 1964 called Keep On Pushing. Okay. They also had a song called People Get Ready in 1964. That was at the peak, the heyday of the civil rights movement. Then towards the end of the civil rights movement, you had Sly and the Family Stone with Everyday People in 1969. Like those were songs that were encouraging people to have some resilience in the time periods that we were in, and also giving people a little bit of a foreshadowing about what was to come. People get ready. And then once, Everyday People, we're all very alike in many ways, more ways than we like to admit. And I think that those are two groups, three songs that really spoke to the time period we were in.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And I'd love to further elaborate on that too. So in what ways did R&B groups quietly, but also powerfully support civil rights movements and collective Black resilience?
In the 60s, through the songs that were released, by also appearing at some of the most momentous occasions, particularly the March on Washington and other marches. And they lived it because many of these artists were part of the Chitlin circuit, which is when they're down south and in the Midwest, and they're performing, in clubs that were probably Black owned or Black managed. They weren't allowed to perform in some of the white clubs, or if they weren't allowed to use the bathrooms there. They had to come on, take a bus, perform there, and leave. And so just through them not letting that, the civil rights of the movement, whether they were going through a sundown town or whether they were performing at a venue that didn't allow white people or Black people to dine there, but they could work there, they could dine there, just from living it and continuing to still be persistent and consistent throughout the decades, the 50s, 60s, 70s, they, through their actions, were silently and out loud kind of standing up to civil rights because they didn't let it deter them.
No, that's really beautiful. And thank you for sharing that too. And, something that I've been thinking a lot about too is like how sometimes I think like entertainment can also be like extractive, like taking it as entertainment, like from, different cultures. I'm thinking particularly with people of color without like, really valuing the people who like are producing this art and this music. Do you think, I love the perspective that you have, but do you feel that connection between music and just social activism is something that like a lot of people do like realize, or I'm just wondering where you think like it hits like a wider audience right now?
Currently, I don't think there's a lot of that going on. I think most artists are more worried about like their personal brand and record sales than making a stand in terms of what's going on in terms of rights for people of color, what's going on in the world. I think that they kind of separate themselves because they don't want to make a stand and maybe upset a portion of their fan base. Only the very, very successful people who might not care will speak out. But I think you won't really hear too many songs made about sticking with it and what's going on today. I just think that it's changed and it's more commercialized now. So people are more risk averse in terms of releasing music that speaks to the current social issues we have.
No, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And this is like, I feel like a topic that I'm not well aware about. So I'm really appreciative of your wisdom. What, like in your perspective, what do you think happened? Like when or how was that shift though, for folks where you see where it is right now? Because I know you were saying before, like it used to have more powerful messages.
I think we go through the 70s. It was still pretty preeminent, but then the 80s, 90s, 2000s, I think it kind of stopped. I think it just, music became probably just a little bit commercial. They became less risk averse. It's harder to get a record deal. And when you get a record deal and they want to promote the music, they don't want anything too controversial because they want you to reach as mass audience as possible. And so only the true independent artist, like a Nipsey Hussle, he can say what he wants to say, and he's got a massive following, but he's rare. There are other artists who are just trying to get on the radio and get a deal, so they might not be as emboldened to say what they want to say. So I think through the 80s, through the 70s, kind of died, it kind of faded. And then once you got to the 80s, 90s, 2000s, it's not really very as common as it was before.
No, I appreciate that too. And, I really love the work you do because I think I'm not as familiar with like, R&B specifically in terms of like, how we're speaking. I think in my own personal experience, it's more like being aware of like hip hop and like being related to like social justice too. But why do you think that the political and social labor of R&B groups has been so overlooked in mainstream historical narratives? Because I think this isn't something that's as common as like, you hear about like hip hop and like social justice.
It's almost like hip hop kind of took the place of speaking out. And I just think that it just kind of faded away from R&B. I think R&B music, it used to be right up there with hip hop in terms of popularity and everything. And hip hop is probably a little more popular. So R&B is always in the background, though. It definitely will never die. Hip hop, pop, rock, they all sample R&B music. So it's still being recreated and relived. Yeah. It's just shifted. The taste of people have kind of shifted. The public's perception of what is popular has shifted because R&B music is still very popular, but the public's perception of what is popular has changed. Whereas it used to be R&B and now it's kind of shifted. That's what I'll say.
No, that's beautiful. What do you think caused the shift, though? I'm interested to hear your
I think the emergence of hip hop as mainstream, because hip hop, is the biggest genre in the world. Now, of course, there are other genres that are competing and maybe getting a little bit bigger, but overall, you look at history over the last 20 years, hip hop is ruling it 25 years. I think you have all these different genres now, and people are more apt to want to be classified into different genres like EDM music, house music, Afro house, Amapiano, Afro beats. Like there's disco house. There's so many different genres now that the music industry is much more fragmented when it comes to genres. So it's like we're all kind of competing for the same space, same ears. So it just makes it different from how it was before.
Okay, no, thank you for sharing that. And so R&B has always told stories about love, but it also, speaks on subjects such as loss, betrayal, and healing. So how do those emotional truths create community and collective catharsis?
Anyone who suffered heartbreak can relate to an R&B singer or artist or group who's singing about heartbreak. Anyone who suffered loss, whether you lost a parent, a relative, you can relate to R&B music. Groups like the song Sadie. Anyone who's been betrayed, and maybe been stabbed in the back can relate to plenty of R&B songs, whether it be Backstabber or whether it be, Ish, Damn, Mother Something by D'Angelo. Like there are always songs about these things that happen. And if you've been through something like that, you can relate to the song, whether it be a lyric, whether it be a rhythm, whether it be the chorus. It's just consistent.
Yeah, no, that's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And you write about the rise and decline of R&B groups. So what kind of structural shifts in the music industry contributed most to their disappearance?
I would say in the music industry, so the Telecommunications Act of 1996 was supposed to democratize and make it easier for radio stations to play different types of music. It ended up having the opposite effect, where these three big radio companies, Cumulus Media, Town Square Media, and iHeart Media, bought up the majority of radio stations across the country in the U.S., and they went to a playlisting format. So whether you were in Chicago, Seattle, D.C., Atlanta, Los Angeles, you're generally going to hear the same songs on a playlist in every city. So it took away the organic growth of different artists who would first become popular in their cities. Boyz II Men in Philadelphia, Destiny's Child in Houston, you have TLC in Atlanta. All these groups that became popular in their cities and then grew out, but that was prevented because the Telecommunications Act and the purchase of all these radio stations limited the amount of local groups' airplay on their stations. That's one thing. Then you had the recession of like 2007 or 2011. And so during that time period, we lost over 50% of mom and pop record stores, which were the primary marketing venue and sales venue for a lot of R&B groups. You would go there on a Saturday for meet and greets. You go there every Tuesday to get your new music. As they go out of business, it just made it more challenging. And then after that was the emergence of iTunes. Music went from an album consumption to a singles consumption. And as you said before, R&B music, R&B groups, they tell stories in their albums. You can't just pick track 6 and listen to that. You need to listen to every track, the interludes, the outludes, and do that. So I think those are two big reasons in terms of what caused just the decline of R&B groups.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And just in your opinion, like how do you think that people can like really like listen to the music and, appreciate this as entertainment while also like recognizing and valuing just like the history behind it and, the stories that it is telling from, different communities?
Well, listening to the groups that are out now, listening to the individuals that are out now, you're buying the book that's out, the Bible book or whatever that's out, but also learning about the samples to the hip hop and pop and rock songs that you love, learn about where those samples came from and listen to those original tracks so you can see that, a song by Sabrina Carpenter, Bedcam, is really sampling I'm So Into You by Tamia and Fabulous.
Interesting.
Just learn the history of the songs you're listening to, and that'll bring you always back to R&B and R&B groups.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that though, because I think I'm not that familiar. But like, what was that connection? Like, why do you feel that other genres like go to like R&B to like sample the music and everything? Yeah, I just find that like so curious.
Because R&B music is foundational. It's foundational. It's where a lot of genres derive from. It's it's popular. It brings nostalgia. It's good music. Like. Yeah. It's like the grand poobah, so to speak, is so they go to what's worked in the past, and there's so much rich history in terms of music and samples that are taken from R&B groups that people just need to know where it's coming from. It's because of a strong history and success in the past.
Yeah, no, that's really beautiful. And, what kind of conversations do you think people should be having? Because I think as you've spoken, I feel like there's so much just rich history, rich storytelling that it's like, I think it's like an opportunity for dialogue. Like what kind of conversations do you hope that people will take away from, the music that they're listening to?
Just an understanding of where the music is coming from, how the artists are sampling, maybe what the original song was about, and just understanding the origins of the music, origins of the artists, where the artists were, how they had their journey. So that's what the conversation should be about. Who's this group? Where do they come from? What did they release? Why did they succeed? Why did they fade away? Are they still around? Just learning about who is sampling, where the samples are coming from, and tell us all the background information about every group.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. And what do you think that the decline of R&B groups tell us about how Black collectivism has been devalued more broadly in American culture?
I wouldn't say that the Black collectivism has been devalued.
Okay.
I just think that R&B groups have just faded away because of an imperfect storm.
Okay.
Because there's still R&B singular acts. There's groups in general. Because you look at pop and rock, there's significantly less groups too. So groups in general financially are not very financially viable for labels. And labels, once they went through the recession of the late 2000s, early 2010s, They were much more focused on getting better return on their investments. And groups are very tricky because instead of having one person to work on makeup and sound, you have to have 5 people to track down. Maybe with the emergence of electronic production, you don't need to have session musicians and 5 people singing. You get one person like a Billie Eilish who does her whole album, Grammy award-winning album, phenomenal album with her brother in her house. Like that was different. So I just think these are all just certain aspects that, makes it more difficult for R&B groups to rise to the top as they once were.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, because I was just wondering, like, if I don't know, I'm wondering, like, if there's, like this shift, or I don't know. It's in touch. I think it's just because I'm coming off of a conversation too, where someone's talking about like, hey, how AI is like helping to shift a certain narrative, like subconsciously, though, like we're just not aware of that. So do you feel like that shift is like intentional in a way, or yeah, I'm just wondering, like,
In terms of AI and music?
oh, no, like, but just in terms of like, I guess how we were talking about like the decline, like if there's, just in terms of like storytelling in music as well, like how you were talking about, like, it seems like there's different narratives now. Like, I wonder, like, is it like intentional by, I don't know. I guess me as an activist, I think like the higher powers may be like, they're making us think not about, critically about social issues and stuff. So that's something that I wonder about too. Like, if I just brought up the AI because it's more like, we think that we still have like, it's not exactly free will, but we think that we're thinking on our own, but like there's like powers, systems that are making us like think a certain way, or like trying to divert the attention from like things that we actually should be talking about.
Yeah, I think that our attention spans are significantly shorter now than they once were.
Right.
Traditionally, R&B music, R&B blues is longer, 3, 4, 5 minutes with interludes, outludes. So people lack the patience to listen to that. Plus, they only want to listen to 1 or 2 songs on an album, not the whole album. So I think that has an effect. But I do think the attention span is an issue because people just don't like paying attention. So we have to adjust. And when I say we, it's like R&B artists, R&B groups have to kind of adjust because music has shifted. The average song now is less than 3 minutes, where, a decade ago was in between 3 and 4 minutes. And even 2 decades ago, it was 4 and 5 minutes. So the songs are significantly shorter, much more simple. There's less risks being taken in music in terms of the chords they use, the progressions. It's just different for most songs. And so it's more cookie cutter now. You have your verse, chorus, verse, chorus, out. Whereas before you might have the intro, you might have a verse, a bridge, a chorus, another verse, and then an outro. So it's just, music has become much more simple and much more homogenized, in my opinion.
No, thank you for sharing that. And I think even though we're talking about different subjects, I feel like I could really relate because I think it's really scary how people's attention spans are so short right now. I even watch my daughter like scrolling to YouTube and like you're only spending like a couple seconds on each of them. And, I'm even thinking with this podcast as well, because I've been thinking of like, I've been talking to people about short attention spans and stuff. And people are like, Denise, maybe you should do like 20, 30-minute episodes. But I'm thinking like, I don't know. I don't think I could really tell the story that I want to tell. But at the same time, it's like, how can I keep my creative integrity while at the same time, like, shift to this, changing audience that's out there. Just, in general, how I think like people's attention spans are just getting a lot shorter right now. So that's something I've been grappling with as well.
Yeah, I understand. Completely. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what lessons can today's artists, organizers, and movement leaders learn from the structure, discipline, and unity of R&B groups?
Just persistence and resilience, because many artists, it took a long time to pop off, as we say. It took them a long time that it stayed with it. Even a famous group like the Supremes, when they were first signed, they were only allowed to clap hands on songs, then sing backup. Then finally, 3.5 or 4 years later, they're allowed to release their own music. Their first 6 or 7 or 8 songs didn't do well. They were actually called the no-hit Supremes inside of Motown. But once they had that first song that went number 1, they got number 1 on, I think it was 11 of their next 13 songs. So they did well. My favorite group to talk about is the Whispers. They released their first song in 1964. Their goal was to get a top 10 Billboard Hot 100 radio hit. It took them for 15 years to and the beat goes on to get into the top 20, 1979. You'd think that right after that, they would ease right into the top 10. But no, it took them 8 more years. Then they finally got their only top 10 hit, Rock Steady, in 1987. So this is a group that spent 23 years toiling, trying, performing, writing, releasing music before they got to their goal. Now they're legends, of course, but that's a story of resilience. I don't know if you'll see a group in our current era where it will take them 23 years to get their hits. They will be gone after 2 or 3 years.
No, that's what I was wondering. Like, what do you think is the timeline for artists nowadays?
You need to have a hit in the first 2 or 3 years, if that.
Wow.
If you're signed to a label, the first album, otherwise they'll just shelve you or they won't release your music. You really need to hit in the first year, sometimes 2. Otherwise, it's tough. That's why so many artists nowadays are staying independent, because they can control that. They don't have to worry about a label. They can release their music. And what they're doing is they're coming to music labels with a community already, with an audience, with the platform, and some history in terms of strong live shows and release music. And it's kind of flipped nowadays. So then they're more attractive to the labels. Then a label will engage and work with them.
Okay, no, thank you for sharing that. Again, I'm not that familiar with it, but do you feel like people who are releasing music independently have more flexibility of what kind of storytelling that they want to tell? Or do you feel like mainstream media is like pushing people to push out certain kind of content? I'm just interested to see what like releasing music independently will be different from like mainstream.
I think absolutely independent musicians have more control, more flexibility, but they have a tougher road to get a lot of airplay. Because once you get signed with the label, they have the machine that will get your songs on the radio, get you on different platforms, different features. But independent artists, they can sing and talk about what they want. As long as they're growing their fan base, people will hear it and share it. So it's a little bit of a tougher road, but they do have more flexibility.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing. And, I'd love to talk about your other work too. So as the first African-American president of MPI Southern California in 45 years, congratulations. That's wonderful. How has your understanding of collective power shaped your leadership style?
Well, I like to go by saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
I love
that. You really can't make change, have success if you're alone. So you need to work with people, and you have to figure out how to work with people well, different types of people from different demographics. So I think working with people is the true cheat code to being successful.
Yeah, no, I'd love to hear more of your thoughts. Like, what do you feel like is different, like working as together as a collective versus like just being by yourself? Because I think even for myself too, like with activism, I think there's this one quote I had a friend used to say is like, individually we're like just drops of water, but together we're like a mighty river, and can really do. So yeah, I'd love just to hear like what do you see in the beauty of just collective power?
I think when you're working with a group of people, you can identify your blind spots better.
Right.
You learn from people because people have different expertise, people have different experiences. You're able to do more than you could do, just in general by yourself. And it's just a way for you to like have a more well-rounded end product, to work with just different kinds of people, gives you different perspectives, and you end up getting to be more intelligent and more well-versed on different artists, well, I won't say artists, different ideas from different perspectives.
Right. No, thank you for sharing that. So across DJing, teaching, and writing, what has remained your guiding principle when it comes to service and community?
So I'm very active in the community. I like to volunteer in different nonprofits. And so I think that just using the writing and teaching, just setting an example for people to follow, being true to myself. And, at the core, I'm an educator. So knowledge is power. So the more I can educate people on different subjects, the better. And that's the way I give back. I always very passionate about the music industry. So my goal is to close the knowledge gap between the artist and the industry. So the more the artists know, the better decisions they make. And I help musicians make better business decisions. So that's at my core. It's all about education.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And, something that I really want to do with this podcast too is encourage people to really show up in their communities as well and like make change. That's why I want to, bring a lot of different kind of voices to this platform, like showing that you can make a difference in a lot of different ways. But, if someone like wants to make a difference in their community, but doesn't know how to yet, what would you say that their first step should be, or how can they start getting involved?
Look for a nonprofit that has a presence in your industry, that not in your industry,
Mhm.
in your area where you live, that
Right.
works on a subject you're passionate about. Maybe you're passionate about, the homelessness problem. Well, try to find a
Yeah.
nonprofit that helps with like homelessness or food insecurity is what it's called. Maybe you're really passionate about sports. Maybe there's some
Right.
nonprofits around, sports or whatever. Find an area that you're interested in, find a nonprofit, and then volunteer. I think that's the first step. And then
Yeah.
after you volunteer, you'll meet other people and other doors will open for you.
No, that's really beautiful. And do you know any like specific resources that people could look up? So, like for example, I know there's Volunteer Match or like Google searching. Are there any like places that you would recommend that people start even looking up, like what might be around them?
I like Google.
Hmm.
Volunteer search is good.
Yeah.
Google's really the most effective place. Also, just kind of look around. You'll
Yeah.
see different events. Eventbrite can show you different events that are
Right. I
going
love
on in your
Eventbrite.
area.
Yeah.
Volunteer. Look for local chapters of national associations that can be relevant to you, so then you can volunteer with the local chapter. Those are
Mhm.
my kind of tried and true tactics and methods of research.
Okay, no, thank you for sharing. And with the next question, I've been thinking about because I've done a lot of community work myself as well, and I feel the work can get heavy. And I think as I've gotten older, I've learned how to like just find joy in this work and really bringing it back to myself and just enjoying life. So, with that, how do you personally stay grounded and resilient while carrying the weight of cultural preservation and storytelling?
Sleep. Uh, I try to have some interesting hobbies, whether it's reading books,
Uh-huh.
um, going out to shows, something to unwind and kind of unplug. Try to do that as often as possible. Even
Uh-huh.
sneak in a video game here and there. Travel, which helps kind of reset the battery. Those are probably my
Yeah.
favorite activities.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing. That's beautiful. So, if listeners walk away from this conversation, remembering just one thing about R&B groups and Black cultural history, what do you hope what that would be?
That R&B groups helped create the soundtrack of the past and the
Right.
present through sampling and what you're hearing, and in the future. It'll never go away. It's always going to be the foundation, the past, present, and future of the music you're listening to. And it has evolved through the times. The R&B music will continue to evolve. It'll always be here. It might not be
Mhm.
talked about a lot, but it's still there underneath, running very strong.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you. And something else that I really want to do with this podcast as well is like show people like how to be like allies for other communities, even if they might not recognize or identify in that particular group in themselves. And moving in solidarity is something that's really important for me as well. So, with that, what does moving in solidarity look like when it comes to honoring Black music, history, and collective creativity today?
I think it first starts with just, educating people on the music and the history, and
Hmm.
then partnering and collaborating with other, we'll say people, other types of music, whether it be pop, rock, different types of music, so that,
Hmm.
working together. You'll see that kind of frequently nowadays with different artists from like pop on R&B, et cetera, hip hop. So really
Okay.
just kind of embracing all the different genres, all the different audiences, and just showing that we all have the most important thing in common, which is a love for music and a love for storytelling.
Yeah, I love that so much. Thank you for sharing that. And I know that you talked about this earlier in our conversation, but I'd love to just, touch on it again as we're wrapping up this conversation. But how can listeners actively support the preservation of Black cultural memory and not just consume it?
We'll share it with friends,
Oh,
purchase and support these artists financially, spread it word of mouth.
right.
And if you see some organizations or people who are, I'm forgetting the right word, I want to say
Mhm.
exploiting the culture, or they call them culture vultures, call it
Uh-huh.
out. make sure they know that that's unacceptable, and just, keep spreading the good word. But if you see someone who's doing some things that are not the best and exploiting the genre, exploiting the art, call it out, spread the word, and tell them that that's not right.
Yeah, that's beautiful. No, thank you for sharing that. And, I had such a wonderful time talking with you. Thank you again for your time. But, are there any other words that you like to leave to my listeners, or anything for them to think about, or maybe anything that might not have come up that you want to share with folks?
Just appreciate good music, particularly pay attention to songs where there are artists of any genre who are really singing from the heart, sharing good lyrics. I think we didn't talk about this, and I don't want to talk about it much, but people talk about AI music and all that currently.
Right.
But AI will never be able to replicate a person singing a song who's experienced heartbreak in their soul, or who's experienced loss. And live performances, I would encourage your audience to continue to support artists, go out to see them live, embrace with their communities, support artists by their merch. I think that is how you will continue. We will continue to allow all the true artists rise to the top.
No, I love that. That's beautiful. You bring up something that I've been thinking about too, just like the use of AI, because I feel like I really appreciate using it to, help me polish my work as well and make me more efficient. But at the same time, I've been thinking a lot about like how it might be taking creativity away from people. And also, I just want to hear your thoughts. Like, what do you think about like AI and just like, people using it in their creative work?
I think AI is a good tool. It's a good tool to help. It can be an assistant for you. It can help you brainstorm.
Right.
But in terms of creating the art, I don't think that can be, it can create the art, and it sure can sound good and sound right. But I still think that in terms of creating the art and having it sound authentic from a human, that won't happen, particularly when they're singing live or performing live. And I think that that's the distinguishing factor. And people eventually want to meet who's behind the music, and they want to meet a person that they can relate to, they can look up to. And you can't look up to like an AI artist or whatever. You can like their music and support it, but there's something about being in a room and someone sings a note and it might crack a little, but it still captures the audience's attention for minutes. And I think that that's something that AI will not be able to replicate.
No, I love that too, because I've been thinking about that a lot too. Like, I think AI is taking over in different, just different parts in society. But like, I've been thinking a lot about like, what's that human part, like that heart that, people just bring that, like you said, like AI just won't be able to replicate. And because even like myself, I was in the field of recruitment, and I know that AI is taking over that too. But, I think it's hard. It's a challenge for me, because it's like, in a way, it's making us more efficient, but at the same time, it's making us miss out on that human connection. So I think that's why, like, I've been really enjoying having these podcast conversations. It's like really two humans just talking to each other, just getting to know our stories. And, like, I don't think like AI can replicate just that human connection that people really have, though. But, thank you for sharing that. That's such a beautiful perspective.
My pleasure. Yes.
Okay, well, you just lastly, before we wrap up, again, thank you for your time today. But how can people find you if they'd like to connect with you?
They can go to amaniexperience.com.
Okay.
That's my website. All my socials are there. If you happen to be an artist that's watching or listening and want to talk about the music or your music, just go to amaniexperience.com/call. And it's Amani Experience on all the socials. The books are out. You can find them on Amazon.
Okay.
So that's where you can find them, on my website and all the places.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you again for this beautiful conversation. I just wanted to say, I learned a lot from you today, and, I wish you all the best moving forward. Just, you're doing wonderful work, not just within like entertainment and music, but I think you're really like doing a lot of positive work in the community, and I highly commend you for that.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, and have a good rest of your day.
Okay.
Thank you for being here and tuning in to Voices That Propel Us, stories of justice, action, and community. Your presence in this movement matters. If today's conversation moved you, share it, talk about it, and keep the work going. Together, we're not just imagining change, we're making it. Until next time, stay bold, stay grounded, and stay in the fight.
myself.